My name is Clara. I'm sharing my story because I want to warn others, especially young women like me, not to fall into the trap I did. One seemingly small decision can unravel everything you hold dear. It can shatter your family, steal your dreams, and leave you with nothing but regret. That's what happened to me, and I carry the weight of it every day. I was 21 years old, living in Lisbon, Portugal, in a modest neighborhood where the streets were narrow and the houses leaned close together, as if sharing secrets. My family wasn't wealthy. My father, Manuel, drove a delivery van, weaving through the city's steep hills from dawn until midnight. His hands were calloused, his eyes heavy with exhaustion, but he never complained. My mother, Anna, worked as a seamstress, hunched over her sewing machine in our cramped living room, stitching intricate patterns into dresses and curtains until her fingers ached. They poured every ounce of their energy into providing for me, their only child. To them, I was more than a daughter. I was their dream of a better future. From the time I was little, my parents had pinned their hopes on me. They wanted me to escape the struggles they'd endured. Clara will go to university, my father would say, his voice warm with pride. She'll have a big office, a desk of her own, and people will look up to her. My mother would nod, her tired eyes glowing with the same vision. Their sacrifices fueled my determination. I wanted to make them proud, to give them a life where they could rest, where they wouldn't have to count every euro or skip meals to pay the bills. I was fortunate to earn a spot at a prestigious private university in Lisbon, studying international business. The tuition fees were steep, a heavy burden on my parents' shoulders. My father took extra shifts, delivering packages late into the night. My mother stayed up past midnight, her sewing machine humming like a lullaby through our thin walls. I saw the toll it took on them. My father's slumped shoulders, my mother's red-rimmed eyes. But they never let me feel guilty. "This is for you, Clara," they'd say. "You're worth it." Every morning I boarded a rattling tram to the university, packed with commuters. The ride was long, the air thick with heat and the chatter of strangers. But I didn't mind. I clutched my books and dreamed of the future, of a career that would lift my family out of hardship, of a life where my parents could finally rest. I studied hard, poring over textbooks in the library until the lights dimmed, determined to honor their sacrifices. When I was 16, my family had arranged for me to marry my cousin Thomas, the son of my mother's brother. Thomas was gentle and quiet, with a shy smile that made my heart flutter. We'd grown up together, playing in the cobblestone streets of our neighborhood. sharing secrets under the shade of olive trees. As we grew older, our bond deepened into something more. In the evenings he'd call me, his voice soft and steady, and we'd talk for hours about our plans. We dreamed of a simple life, a small apartment by the Tagus River, a garden where we'd grow herbs, and maybe, one day, children named after our grandparents. "Clara, you're my everything," he'd whisper. "I'll always protect you." His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I believed in him, in us. I thought our love was unbreakable, a steady anchor in a world full of uncertainty. But everything changed when I started university. My roommate, Ines, was like no one I'd ever met. She was vibrant, fearless, a whirlwind of energy. Her wardrobe overflowed with trendy clothes, bright dresses, leather jackets, shoes that clicked confidently on the dormitory floor. Ines lived life on her own terms, staying out late at rooftop parties, laughing loudly, and charming everyone she met. She was a social media star, her Instagram and TikTok accounts filled with glamorous selfies, dance videos, and glimpses of a life that seemed effortless and exciting. Thousands followed her, leaving heart eyes emojis and gushing comments. Strangers sent her gifts, designer bags, jewelry, even cash, just for posting a video or mentioning a brand. To me, Ines was a dazzling contrast to my quiet, frugal existence. At first, I admired her from a distance. My life felt small next to hers. I wore the same faded sweaters and scuffed sneakers, while she flaunted new outfits every week. I spent my evenings studying or talking to Tomas, while she danced under neon lights at clubs I'd never dared to visit. Her confidence made me feel plain, like a shadow in her glow. I started following her online, scrolling through her posts late at night, watching her world unfold in perfect filtered squares. It was mesmerizing, and it made me feel inadequate. One rainy evening, as we sat in our dorm room, Ines noticed me staring at my worn-out backpack. "Clara," she said, tossing her phone onto her bed, "you're gorgeous. You could be huge online. You could make serious money, way more than your parents make in a month. Why are you killing yourself studying when you could live like this?" She gestured to her pile of new clothes and the sleek laptop she'd bought with her earnings. I laughed nervously, brushing her off. "That's not for me," I said, but her words lingered, like a seed planted in soft soil. I couldn't stop thinking about my parents. My father's van had broken down twice that month, eating into their savings. My mother's hands trembled from hours of sewing. and I'd overheard her worrying about medical bills for her worsening eyesight. The pressure of their sacrifices weighed on me. What if I could help them? What if I could ease their burden just a little? The idea of making money quickly, without years of studying, began to tempt me. A few weeks later, I gave in. I created a secret social media account, using a fake name to keep it hidden from my family and Tomas. At first, my posts were innocent. Short videos of me smiling at the camera, sharing snippets of my day, or lip-syncing to popular songs. To my surprise, people noticed. Followers trickled in, then poured in. Comments like, "You're stunning," and "Keep posting," flooded my notifications. For the first time, I felt seen, admired. It was intoxicating. Ines encouraged me to push further. "Clara, if you want real money, you need to stand out," she said one night, her eyes gleaming. Bolder content gets more views. More views mean more cash. I hesitated, my stomach twisting. I knew what she meant. Videos that were more revealing, more provocative. I told her no at first, clinging to the values my parents had instilled in me. But the allure of quick money, of easing my family's struggles, gnawed at me. I convinced myself it was harmless, just a way to help my parents. I started posting videos that made me blush to watch, telling myself it was temporary, that no one I knew would see them. I kept it all hidden. My parents thought I was studying late at the library. Tomas thought I was busy with assignments when I dodged his calls. Only Ines knew the truth, and she cheered me on, showing me how to monetize my posts and connect with brands. The money started coming in, small amounts at first, then hundreds of euros. I sent some to my parents, telling them it was from a part-time tutoring job. Their relieved smiles made me feel like I was doing the right thing, even as guilt gnawed at me. Then, one reckless night, everything fell apart. Ines and I were in our dorm, laughing and filming a video together. It was bolder than anything I'd done before. Egged on by her encouragement and a glass of wine, I thought it was just for us, a private moment. But Ines, without asking, uploaded it to my public account. By morning, it had gone viral. The video spread like wildfire, shared across platforms, reaching people far beyond my followers. By afternoon, whispers followed me on campus. By evening, it had reached my neighborhood. That night, my phone rang. It was my father. His voice, usually warm and steady, was raw with pain. "Clara," he said, each word heavy, "you've broken our hearts." The line went silent. I couldn't speak. My hand shook as I clutched the phone, my chest tight with shame. I tried calling back, but he didn't answer. My mother wouldn't pick up either. Later, I learned the video had reached our neighbors, our relatives, even Tomas. The life I'd built, the dreams I'd carried, crumbled in a single day. Tomas called me the next morning. His voice was cold, distant, nothing like the boy who'd promised to protect me. "How could you do this, Clara?" he asked. "I don't even know who you are anymore." He hung up before I could explain. My parents refused to see me when I went home. Their door locked, their silence louder than any words. The university called me into a meeting, citing conduct unbecoming a student. I left school, my dreams of a degree abandoned. Now I'm 23, living alone in a tiny apartment, scraping by with odd jobs. The money I earned online is gone, spent on fleeting things that meant nothing. My parents barely speak to me. Thomas is engaged to someone else. Ines moved on, her social media fame untouched by the wreckage she left in my life. I see her posts sometimes, still bright and carefree, while I carry the weight of my choices. I'm telling my story because I don't want anyone else to make the same mistake. One choice, one moment of weakness can cost you everything: your family, your love, your future. I thought I was helping my parents, but I lost them instead. I thought I was building a better life, but I tore mine apart. Be careful what you chase. Some paths lead only to regret. As I watched those carefree students laughing in the streets of Lisbon, their voices echoing through the vibrant city, my heart ached with a pain I couldn't name. They wore bright smiles and new clothes, their lives untouched by the kind of mistake that had shattered mine. Once, I'd been like them, dreaming of a future filled with promise, Sainty. Studying in a prestigious university, loved by my family and my fiancé, Tomas. But one reckless choice had cost me everything: my parents' trust, Tomas's love, my friends, my education, my dignity. Now, at 21, I was alone, starting from nothing in a city that felt both familiar and cruelly indifferent. My name is Clara, and I'm telling my story to warn others. One decision can change your life forever. It can break the people who love you, steal the future you planned, and leave you with only the pieces to pick up. I don't want anyone else to walk the path I did. If my words can save even one person from the pain I've endured, then sharing this story will be worth it. Before I continue, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you reading or listening from? Your support, whether a kind comment or sharing my story, means more than you know. It reminds me I'm not alone in this journey. Now let me take you through the next chapter of my life. The painful steps I took to rise from the ashes of my mistakes. After leaving the university hostel, I moved into a tiny rented room in a rundown part of Lisbon. The walls were stained, the paint peeling like old skin, and the single window rattled in its frame, letting in drafts of cold air. The rent was all I could afford with the little money I'd saved from my brief stint online. I carried one bag with me, some clothes, a few books, and a photo of my parents, Manuel and Anna, smiling at me during happier times. That photo was both my comfort and my torment. I'd sit on the creaky wooden floor, staring at their faces, wondering how I'd let them down so completely. The first nights in that room were unbearable. The bed was a thin mattress on a rusted frame, and the silence of the empty space pressed against me. I'd lie awake, replaying every moment that led to my downfall. Why had I listened to Inez? Why had I thought posting those videos would solve my family's struggles? I saw my father's broken voice. "You've broken our hearts." And Thomas's cold words. "I can't marry someone who chose this path." Each memory was a knife, twisting deeper. I cried until my tears ran dry, my pillow damp with grief. There were moments when the darkness felt so heavy. I wondered if I should just give up, if the world would be better without me. But one memory pulled me back from the edge. I remembered my father's voice, years ago, when he'd tuck me in at night. "Clara, you're destined for great things," he'd say, his eyes shining with belief. That memory was a flicker of light in my despair. It reminded me that I was still his daughter, that I could still fight to make him proud, even if he couldn't see it now. I told myself, I can change, I can rise. The next morning, I sat at my wobbly table, took a deep breath, and deleted every trace of my online presence. I blocked Ines and the so-called friends who'd encouraged me down that path. It felt like cutting away a piece of myself, but it was a start. With my bag packed, I left the hostel behind and moved into that small, crumbling room. I had no money, no family, no friends, just a stubborn will to survive. The city felt vast and unforgiving as I wandered its streets, my eyes red from crying, my steps heavy with shame. I needed work, something to keep me afloat. For weeks I trudged from shop to shop, cafe to cafe, asking for any job. Cleaning, serving, anything. Most turned me away. Some recognized me from the viral video, their eyes narrowing with judgment before they shook their heads. "We don't need staff," they'd say. Or worse, they'd say nothing, just point to the door. Each rejection chipped away at my resolve, but I kept going. I had to. After 3 grueling weeks, I found a job at a call center on the outskirts of Lisbon. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and food, and the hours were relentless. 10-hour shifts, sometimes longer. I sat in a gray cubicle, a headset pinching my ears, answering calls from customers who ranged from polite to outright cruel. Some shouted, others hurled insults, their voices dripping with frustration. I swallowed my tears, forcing my voice to stay calm, professional. Inside, I was breaking. At night, I'd drag myself home, my body aching, my mind numb. I'd collapse onto my mattress, eating cheap bread and sipping weak tea, missing my mother's hearty caldo verde and my father's warm laughter. But I clung to one thought. This was honest work. It wasn't much, but it was clean. A far cry from the path I'd taken with Ines. That thought kept me going, even when my body begged me to stop. I saved every euro I could, tucking coins into a tin under my bed. Some nights, I'd pull out my old business management textbooks, their pages worn from my college days. My tears stained the notes as I read, longing to return to the dreams I'd abandoned. I wanted to finish my degree, to prove to my parents and myself that I wasn't defined by my mistake. I enrolled in evening classes at a community college, the only option I could afford. By day, I worked at the call center, my voice hoarse from hours of talking. By night, I studied in a dimly lit classroom, surrounded by others chasing second chances, single mothers, older workers, people like me who'd stumbled but refused to stay down. The classes were basic, far from the prestigious university I'd once attended, but they were a lifeline. I'd drag myself home at midnight, my eyes burning, my hands trembling from exhaustion. Sometimes I'd fall asleep with my face pressed against my books, dreaming of balance sheets and marketing plans. My health began to suffer. I lost weight, my cheeks hollow, my eyes shadowed with dark circles. My hands shook when I answered calls at work, and I caught colds easily in my drafty room. But I refused to give up. This pain won't break me, I'd whisper to myself, staring into the cracked mirror each morning. I thought of my parents, their faces etched with disappointment, and vowed to earn their trust again, even if it took years. One evening, as I walked home from class, I passed a group of students outside a cafe, their laughter bright and carefree. They sipped espressos, their backpacks slung over chairs, their futures stretching out like the sunlit Tagus River. I stopped, watching them from across the street, my chest tight with envy and regret. I'd had that life once, a place at a university, a loving family, a fiancé who adored me. Now I was a stranger to that world, an outsider looking in. The ache was so deep it stole my breath. But then something shifted as I stood there, clutching my worn notebook. I realized I wasn't just mourning what I'd lost. I was fighting for something new. Every call I answered, every page I studied, every sleepless night was a step toward rebuilding. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a life I was choosing. One built on honesty and hard work. A few months later, I gathered the courage to write to my parents. My hands trembled as I penned the letter, pouring out my regret, my shame, and my determination to make things right. I know I hurt you, I wrote. I know I broke your trust, but I'm trying to be the daughter you believed in. Please, give me a chance to prove it. I mailed the letter, my heart pounding with hope and fear. Days passed, then weeks, with no response. I told myself to keep going, to focus on my work and studies. But the silence from my parents was a wound that wouldn't heal. One rainy afternoon, as I sat in my cubicle at the call center, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from my mother. "Clara, we need time," it read. "But we're watching you." Those words, simple as they were, lit a spark in me. They weren't forgiveness, not yet, but they were a crack in the wall between us. For the first time in months, I smiled, a real smile, and whispered a promise to myself. I'll keep going, for them. For me, my journey was far from over. The road ahead was long, paved with exhaustion, loneliness, and the weight of my past. But I was learning to stand again, to build a life from the ruins of my mistakes. I wasn't the Clara who dreamed of a big office or a house by the river with Tomas. I was someone new, someone stronger, forged in the fire of my own choices. And I was determined to keep climbing, no matter how steep the path. I felt like an outsider, watching those students from afar, their lives a reminder of what I'd thrown away. Inace's face haunted me in quiet moments. Her bold smiles, her persuasive words that had lured me into a world of quick fame and deeper regret. Anger bubbled up sometimes. She'd pushed me, shown me the path, but guilt always followed, sharp and unrelenting. I'd chosen it myself. I could have said no. The blame was mine to carry, a heavy shadow I couldn't shake. Months blurred into one another, each day a grind of work and study. Slowly my savings grew, coin by coin, like drops filling a bucket. I allowed myself small indulgences, a fresh loaf of bread from the local bakery, a warm pain de queso instead of stale crackers. One day I splurged on a simple dress from a street market, its soft blue fabric flowing like the Tagus River. When I tried it on in my tiny room, standing before the cracked mirror, I caught a glimpse of the old Clara, the one with dreams in her eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, a genuine smile crossed my lips, but the wounds in my heart ran deep, scars that time hadn't fully healed. I thought of Thomas often, especially on quiet evenings, when the city lights flickered outside my window. Where was he now? Had he found happiness with someone else? Did he ever wonder about me? Or had I become just a painful memory? One night, unable to resist, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to an old photo of us, taken during a sunny picnic by the river. His arm around me, our smiles carefree. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "I'm sorry," to the empty room. He was gone. A chapter closed forever. Then, one crisp winter evening, as the wind howled through Lisbon's narrow alleys, a letter arrived. It was from my parents, the envelope worn and familiar. My hands trembled as I tore it open, my heart pounding like a drum. The words inside were sparse, written in my mother's careful script. "We hope you are well. Clara, we cannot forget what happened, but you are still our daughter." I sank to the floor, clutching the paper, and cried for hours. Tears of hurt mingled with fragile hope. Their forgiveness wasn't complete, but this was a bridge, a tentative step toward mending what I'd broken. Life at the call center remained grueling, a daily test of endurance. Calls poured in endlessly, some voices kind, others laced with frustration or cruelty. I learned to breathe through the insults, to respond with patience, even when my insides twisted. My manager, a stern but fair woman named Sophia, noticed my efforts. One afternoon, after a particularly tough shift, she pulled me aside. "Clara, you're improving every day," she said, her eyes steady. "You have a strength in you that not everyone does." Those words were like sunlight piercing clouds, giving me the courage to push forward. After 3 long years of relentless work, balancing the call center by day and evening classes by night, I finally completed my business degree. The ceremony was simple, held in a modest hall with other adult learners who'd fought their own battles. As I walked across the stage and grasped the certificate, my hands steady, despite the emotion welling inside. Tears fell again, but these were different. Tears of pride, of victory over the darkness that had nearly consumed me. I'd done it. I'd risen from the ruins of my mistakes. With my degree in hand, I searched for better opportunities, sending applications to offices and shops across Lisbon. Many doors slammed shut, Whispers of my past still lingered in some circles, but I refused to falter. One rainy afternoon, wandering the streets near my neighborhood, I spotted a small vacant storefront tucked between a bakery and a flower shop. The rent was affordable, the space humble, but full of potential. I thought of my father's old dream. Clara will have her own office, a big desk where people respect her. This wasn't an office, but it could be a start, a place of my own. I borrowed a small loan from one of my evening class teachers, a kind elderly man named Professor Oliveira, who believed in second chances. "Pay me back when you can," he said, with a warm pat on my shoulder. I promised I would. With the money, I rented the shop and stocked it with basic stationery, pens, notebooks, colorful papers, and simple office supplies. The first day, as I unlocked the door with shaking hands, fear gripped me. What if no one came? What if this failed like everything else? But customers trickled in. A child needing a notebook for school. A mother buying pens for her work. Students seeking graph paper for their projects. I sat behind the worn wooden counter, serving them with a genuine smile, recommending items with care. The shop was small, its shelves modest, but it grew week by week. I painted the walls a cheerful azure blue, reminiscent of Lisbon skies, and hung a sign outside, "Clara's Stationery." Neighbors began to notice, calling me Senora Clara, with nods of respect. "You work so hard," an elderly woman said one day, buying a set of envelopes. Those words warmed me like a cup of hot glow on a cold morning. For the first time in years, pride swelled in my chest, a quiet flame against the lingering shadows. Yet the scars remained. My parents visited rarely, their conversations polite but guarded, avoiding the past like a fragile vase. Termus was a ghost, his absence a dull ache. Some nights, after closing the shop, I'd sit in the dim light, staring at the empty shelves, and let the memories wash over me. The pain was still there, a companion I'd learned to live with. But amid it, I saw glimmers of hope. This is just the beginning, I'd tell myself, wiping away tears. I'd fallen, but now I was rising. Brick by brick, my shop continued to grow, step by careful step. It was still modest, a cozy space, filled with the scent of fresh paper and ink. But it became my anchor, proof that I could rebuild. I worked from dawn until dusk, dusting shelves, organizing displays, and tallying accounts with meticulous care. Every euro earned felt like a victory, not just for survival, but for redemption. It wasn't merely a business. It was my testament to resilience, A second chance I'd carved out with my own hands. One sunny afternoon, as the bells from a nearby church chimed, a man entered the shop. He was unassuming, tall with tousled brown hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a gentle demeanor that put me at ease. He browsed the shelves quietly before asking for notebooks for his students. I handed him a stack, our fingers brushing briefly. When he paid, he offered a warm smile and said, "Thank you, Senora." His voice was soft, kind, like a calm sea after a storm. The following week, he returned, this time for pencils and sketch pads. As I wrapped his purchase, he glanced around and asked, "Do you run this place all by yourself?" I nodded, a bit shy. "Yes, it's mine." His eyes lit up. "That's impressive. You must put in so much effort to make it shine like this." His compliment lingered, a rare acknowledgement in my solitary world. I learned his name was Miguel, a history teacher at a local secondary school. He spoke passionately about his students, their curiosity about the past, and the little victories in the classroom. Miguel became a regular, stopping by after his classes. At first, our conversations were light, discussing the best pens for grading papers, or the latest notebooks with durable covers. But gradually they deepened. He'd ask about my day, noticing when I seemed weary. "Have you eaten today, Clara?" He'd say with genuine concern. In return, he shared stories of his pupils, their funny mishaps during lessons, their wide-eyed wonder at ancient tales of Portuguese explorers. For so long, my life had been shrouded in silence, my evenings heavy with isolation. Miguel's visits brought sparks of light, his gentle words easing the chill in my heart. When he left, the shop felt a little brighter, a little less empty. Still, fear clung to me like fog over the river. My past was a burden I carried silently. What if he learned about the video, the scandal that had ripped my world apart? Would he turn away, his kind eyes filled with judgment or pity? I couldn't bear the thought. So, I kept my story locked away, listening more than sharing, offering smiles instead of secrets. One stormy evening, as rain lashed against the shop's windows like angry waves, Miguel lingered longer than usual. The streets outside were empty, the downpour turning Lisbon's cobblestones into glistening rivers. We sat on stools behind the counter, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and fresh ink. Lightning flashed, illuminating his thoughtful face. He turned to me, his voice soft amid the thunder. "Clara, you look tired. You work too much, Clara, but I admire your strength," Miguel said, his voice soft against the drumming rain outside my shop. His words caught me off guard, stirring a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Tears pricked my eyes, and for a moment, I wanted to pour out my entire story. The shame, the betrayal, the choices that had cost me everything. But fear held me back, a cold grip around my heart. I wasn't ready to risk losing the one person who saw me not as a failure, but as someone worth knowing. So, I just nodded, managing a small smile, and changed the subject to the weather. Weeks turned into months, and Miguel became a steady presence in my life. He'd stop by my shop, Clara's Stationery, with its bright blue walls and neatly arranged shelves, always finding an excuse to buy something. A single pen, a small notebook, a pack of sticky notes he didn't need. I began to suspect he came more for me than for the supplies. And the thought made my heart flutter with a mix of hope and trepidation. My past had taught me to guard my trust, but Miguel's quiet kindness chipped away at my walls. One spring afternoon, as cherry blossoms dusted the Lisbon streets like pink snow, Miguel hesitated at the counter after buying a set of markers. "Clara," he said, adjusting his glasses nervously, "would you like to grab a coffee with me sometime? There's a little cafe by the market I think you'd like." My pulse quickened. Part of me wanted to retreat, to stay safe in my solitary routine. But another part, the part that craved connection, that remembered what it felt like to laugh, whispered yes. "I'd like that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We met at a cozy cafe, its tables spilling onto the cobblestone street, the air rich with the scent of espresso and pastel de nata. We talked for hours, the conversation flowing as easily as the Tagus River. Miguel shared stories of his childhood, growing up in a small village outside Lisbon, where he'd climb olive trees and dream of teaching history. I laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. For the first time in years, the sound startling me with its lightness. When he walked me back to my shop, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, he said, "I hope we can do this again." My heart swelled, and I nodded. Yes. Our coffee dates became a ritual. Walks through Belem's gardens. Evenings watching the city lights from the Ponte 25 de Abril. Quiet moments sharing stories over glasses of Vinho Verde. Miguel opened up about his life. He lived alone in a modest apartment. His parents had passed away years ago, and his sister lived in Porto, raising her young son. His vulnerability made me want to share my own truth, but the weight of my past kept me silent. I feared that if he knew about the video, the scandal that had torn my life apart, his warm eyes would turn cold, just like Tomas's had. One autumn evening, As we sat on a park bench overlooking the river, the air crisp with the scent of falling leaves, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. My hands were clammy, my voice trembling, but I forced the words out. "Miguel, I need to tell you something," I began. "My past, it's not clean. I made a terrible mistake years ago. I got caught up in something online, something I thought would help my family. But it cost me everything. My parents' trust, the man I was supposed to marry, my place at university. People saw me as someone I'm not, and I lost their respect. I've been rebuilding ever since, but I carry that shame. If you want to walk away, I understand." The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at the ground, bracing for rejection, tears welling in my eyes. Then Miguel took a deep breath and spoke, his voice steady. "Clara, your past doesn't define you. I see the woman you are now, the one who works tirelessly, who built a shop from nothing, who fights every day to be better. That's who I care about. Your honesty, your strength. That's enough for me." Relief flooded through me, and I couldn't hold back the tears. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not as a mistake, but as a person worthy of grace. Miguel and I grew closer, our bond deepening with every shared moment. He was gentle, never pressing me to reveal more than I was ready to share. He'd bring me lunch when I forgot to eat, help me rearrange shelves in the shop, or sit with me after closing, listening as I talked about my dreams. His presence was a balm, easing the loneliness that had clung to me for so long. My nights, once heavy with silence, began to feel lighter, filled with his laughter and quiet reassurances. A year later, under a starlit sky, in a quiet corner of Lisbon's Alfama district, Miguel took my hands and looked into my eyes. There was no grand gesture, no diamond ring, just his steady gaze and a simple question. "Clara, I want to build a life with you. Will you be my wife?" My heart raced. Memories of Thomas flashing briefly before fading. I thought of the life I'd lost, but also the one I'd built. The shop, the degree, the woman I'd become. With tears streaming down my face, I said, yes. Our wedding was small, held in a modest church with stained glass windows that cast colorful light across the pews. A handful of friends attended, Professor Oliveira, my call center manager Sophia, and a few loyal customers who'd become like family. My parents, Manuel and Anna, didn't come. The wounds of my past were still too raw, but they sent a letter written in my father's careful hand. "We wish you happiness, Clara. Be well." I clutched it to my chest, crying bittersweet tears. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was a step, a fragile thread reconnecting us. Miguel and I settled into a simple life, renting a small apartment above a bakery, where the scent of fresh bread greeted us each morning. We cooked together, laughed over burnt attempts at bacalhau, and spent evenings planning for the future. He never asked about my past again, only cared about the woman I was now. With his encouragement, Clara's stationery grew. I opened a second shop in a nearby neighborhood, stocking it with colorful pens, journals, and art supplies. Customers called me Señora Clara with respect, their smiles warming me. Children ran in, clutching coins for new pencils, while students lingered to chat about their studies. The shops were more than a business. They were proof of my redemption, a testament to my ability to rise. Yet the scars lingered. At night, when the world was quiet, I'd sit by the window, staring at the city's twinkling lights, and think of my parents' distant eyes, my mother's silence, my father's broken voice. I thought of Tomas, now married to someone else, living a life I'd once imagined as mine. I hoped he was happy, but his memory was a quiet ache, a reminder of what I'd lost. The pain didn't vanish. It became part of me, woven into the fabric of my story. I learned that you can rebuild. You can find love again. But the past leaves marks that never fully fade. One evening years later, my parents visited unannounced. They stood in the doorway of my second shop, their faces older, softer. My mother's eyes lingered on the bright shelves, the Clara's stationery sign glowing outside. She reached for my hand, her touch tentative but warm, and said, "You've done well, Clara. You're strong." My father nodded, his gaze meeting mine for the first time in years. They didn't speak of the past, but their presence was a quiet forgiveness, a bridge rebuilt over time. I cried that night, not from pain but from gratitude. The wounds were healing, slowly, imperfectly. Life with Miguel was steady, a calm harbor after years of storms. My shops thrived, modest but meaningful, employing a few local teens who reminded me of my younger self. Full of dreams, vulnerable to mistakes, I shared my story with them, wanting them to cherish their families, their dignity, their true worth. Don't chase fleeting lights, I'd say. The cost is too high. Some listened, their eyes wide. Others nodded politely, too young to understand. I hoped my words would linger, a caution against the paths I'd taken. Now, as I share my story with you, I stand as a woman remade, not perfect, but whole. I fell once, deeper than I thought possible, but I rose again. I rebuilt my life, found love, and earned respect through hard work and honesty. But the scars remain, a reminder of the price I paid for one reckless choice. I tell you this not for pity, but to warn you. Don't trade your family's trust, your love, or your dignity for likes, followers, or fleeting attention. Your value lies in your heart, your integrity, the quiet strength that carries you through. Choose wisely, because some paths lead only to regret. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If my story has touched you, please share it with someone you care about, a friend, a sister, a daughter. Your support means the world, reminding me that my voice matters, that my mistakes can become lessons for others. Let me know where you're reading or listening from. Your messages are a light in my days. Together, we can spread this truth. You can rise again, but choose the path that keeps your heart whole.